step sounds in a game is a sample being repeated, and then people started to make little variations in pitch of this sample, and it became increasingly sophisticated with middleware, and so a whole set of software emerged, a type of software, game audio middleware, that serves only the purpose of making sound, usually sample-based sounds, pleasurable to use in an interactive context, and there are many different strategies to do that: layering and adaptive mixing and adaptive even spectral shaping and stuff like that, and of course generative approaches as well are coming in, and that's so interesting.
Welcome to Audio Branding, the hidden gem of marketing. Sound plays a more important role in human behavior and our decision-making than you may realize. In this podcast, I'll help you understand the art and science of sound so you can better influence others in business and your life. I'm your host, Jodi Krangle. Let's delve a little deeper. Like you said, it's better to have something that grows on you rather than something that blows you away. Because if you hear that sound that blows you away 15 times in, 10 minutes, it's not gonna feel so great anymore.
Yes, exactly.
So,
it can wear thin pretty quickly. Yeah, it's like, it's like watching an Avenger movie, right? So it's like the problem maybe of too much big hulks hitting. In the first time, it's impressive, and you go like, wow, and then the second and third time. But the 10th time is going to be very annoying.
That is very true. Yeah. Actually, I kind of liken that to the Matrix movies.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I do is because the first concept of that was so incredible. And the first movie was awesome. And then as they progressed, you just got more and more used to it, and it was less and less impressive.
I am, absolutely. That's true. Yes.
Which is unfortunate, but I guess that's how the human brain works.
That's true. Yeah. And yeah, that would be a whole other can of worms to open. But
I know. Yeah.
it's something that maybe just as an association, because when I was still teaching game sound designers, which I'm not doing anymore because I'm now teaching professional sound designers interaction design. But when I was teaching game designers about sound design, one thing that we always discussed and analyzed was how franchises work sonically. So, and in games, this is even a bigger thing than in movies, because the franchise, the 10-9, the sequence, like Mario, Super Mario 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then sometimes they stop counting and put like Odyssey and whatnot.
All of the sounds must progress and be similar and have the same brand so that you recognize what game you're playing.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
And that's where we can learn so much from. I mean, game sound, I always say, it has taught me probably the most about interactive or use-oriented sound design, although you would not expect it from there. It's not product sound design. It has nothing to do with cars or appliances or whatever, but it's the basic mechanisms. It's about interaction. It's about virtual things, but they could be real things that you use, you have to understand, you have to like as well, because you want to play the game in a positive sense. And also they should not wear thin, they should be impressive if needed, and so on. So and also the act of repetition. Game engines always have been good, or game sound always had to struggle with the problem of repetition. Step sounds in a game is a sample being repeated, and then people started to make little variations in pitch of this sample, and it became increasingly sophisticated with middleware, and so a whole set of software emerged, a type of software, game audio middleware, that serves only the purpose of making sound, usually sample-based sounds, pleasurable to use in an interactive context, and there are many different strategies to do that, layering and adaptive mixing and adaptive even spectral shaping and stuff like that, and of course generative approaches as well are coming in, and that's so interesting, and I think some of these techniques can and should be used also in the world of products and environments. And they are in some places. But I think that's something where it becomes a bit difficult to argue to clients as well, because we soon get, I know that not from myself, but from colleagues who worked in the car industry, that even though the car has already everything on board to produce sound, if you just need a single chip to make some sort of processing, because it's so high numbers of production, it has to be so super cheap, and everything is so balanced out, and it's actually harder than you might think to add something smart on the sound level. You really have to push for it and advocate for the benefit of sound, of good sound design and good interactive adaptive sound design in products to get this budgets, and the assignments as well. So that's not always so easy.
Yeah, I know when it comes to automobiles, it's one of those things where the cars themselves are a sound. Like if you, the engines, yes, but the inside of the car is tuned so that when you're listening to something in the radio, in the MP3 player, whatever the thing is you're plugging in, all of the sound system is, depending on the cost of the car, some of them are better than others, but that sound is tuned. It's made so that the higher end the car is, the better that sounds. The more of a interactive, spatial sound you get. And even the way that a car door slams is a different sound.
Yes.
So, yeah, there's so much, and the car industry is huge.
Yeah, it's huge, and it's also it has some huge challenges as well to face. The electric vehicle actually started a lot of new interest in the sonic dimension, of course. But cars are super interesting from a design perspective, because they are very controlled environments on one hand, right? So the manufacturer can perfectly control every aspect of this space where 1 to 5 people sit inside, and they won't move. It's even easier than a cinema. I always say the cinema is really like, it's actually, there are only probably 5 or 10 seats that have good sound in a cinema. the Dolby seats or the THX seats.
Why do you say that? Is it a particular space that they're in, or they're designed that way?
No, they're actually, this is the reference point for the sound system, because the cinema sound system is of course, it's centristic still, or it's balanced, it's symmetrical, left, right, but also front, back. It has a clear direction, and there are some seats in the cinema that are the reference listening spots for THX, Dolby, whatnot. And
I gotta ask now, which ones are those? Is it different in any theater? Is it like each theater has a different one, or is it
I guess
the second center, or like where?
Probably depends on the architecture of the space, right? So how long and high and wide it is, and with Atmos this maybe has decreased a bit, this necessity, but I think still it's there. I think I'm the wrong person to ask this guy. I'm not so much into these regulations.
I was just curious,
but
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, it's okay. It's just compared to the car, where you have a much tighter control of where people sit, and it's much harder to get this wide sound field, but on the other hand, you have a much easier way to address points in space inside this car.
Yeah.
And also,
it can feel much more personal.
Yeah, and you close the door, and modern cars are really well isolated, so you can really differentiate very much from signal to noise, and noise being the outside world in this case.
I can tell you from a voice actor's point of view, if I'm traveling and I want to record something, I do it in my car.
All right. Okay. So
So yeah,
you have a
that
well
is,
isolated car.
yeah,
And that
it helps.
and that's also generating problems because you don't perceive the outside world anymore. You don't hear the cyclist. You don't even and they are both in research and design. There are attempts to, for instance, with microphones, to bring the outside world into the car again in a controlled way with some noise shaping or signal shaping, and of course also cars on computers on wheels. That's another aspect. That's something that we did with the interaction design students some years ago with this German car manufacturer. We explored ways of communication about alarms, even crazy stuff like tire pressure, how much gas is left, or how much energy juice is in the battery. That all ideas such as that the sound of the car changes based on the way I press the gas pedal. So if I'm too aggressive, the sound can actually make me feel that, oh, now you're overdoing it. Like, that's again what a film sound designer would do. In a science fiction film, I would definitely design the sound different if the person was angry and aggressive and go like, and if it was smooth, then you go like this. And why not taking such ideas also, to support economic driving, for instance, to make it a sonically more round, pleasurable experience, to not put the pedal too much to the metal.
That makes total sense. I guess it would be easier with electric cars, though, because then you can regulate the sound of the engine a lot more.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, you wouldn't know to do that on a regular car.
Yes,
it's a little harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So cars are super interesting. Yeah.
They really are.
And also, last point maybe, because I just
sure.
like to talk about this.
It's fine. Go ahead.
Already in a cycle you have the bell, and in the car you have the horn. And if you go to, I don't know, in Europe, I don't know, in Canada or the States, how the honking culture is. But for instance, I know from films from Tati and French producer, or France or Italy, it's known for this kind of expressive horn culture. So people, there are traffic signs and lights, but I don't know. They're just more general indications.
They're guidelines.
They're guidelines.
Yeah.
But the rest is really communication. And you go like, the horn is not just out of the way. It's also, I'm here. Watch out! I'm coming from the right. And if you honk differently, if you honk to a pedestrian.
And it depends on the car, too, because every car has a different honk sound, right? And
yes.
the larger the car, it tends to be the louder the honk.
Yeah.
That's one of the things, right? In North America, we have a lot of space for our cars. So the cars tend to be larger. And that means that a lot of the honking tends to be louder. And I don't know that there's as much of a honking culture as there would be in Europe. That's it. Like, it's not really. I mean, I think it's probably a language in places like New York. I know downtown Toronto has its share. But yeah, it depends. I remember I had a little Pontiac Firefly when I was younger, and it had the most dinky little horn. It was like you were going, "Excuse me," every time you hit it. It was ridiculous.
Oh, cute.
So no point in using it.
Yeah. It's like.
But yeah,
that's funny.
Yeah, I mean,
so, it's about communication, right? It's
yes,
again about communication. And the lack of communication nowadays in the big SUVs, you are really detached from the environment, and also it's hard to communicate to your environment about your presence and so on. And with the electric engine, you appear out of nowhere, more or less. And so there is a lot of potential still.
That is interesting too. I was speaking with a fellow on this podcast not too long ago, Johann Lukemeyer, I believe.
Oh yes, I've seen at least part of that episode. Yes,
Johannes.
Yeah.
He Yeah, he's a really interesting
Hmm.
guy, and he's
Hmm.
been designing sounds for electric cars. So you
Yes.
could get your electric car to sound like a space car, like
He has a system where you can implement your own sounds. I
yeah,
love this story. I loved how he was hacking the Tesla that he bought.
yeah.
I really remember this one. It was really cool. Yes, I
It
really
was
liked
really
it. Yeah,
interesting. So
yeah,
there's so much you can do with the
yeah.
electric vehicles
Hmm.
that would hopefully announce their presence rather than having them sneak up on you. I think I think he mentioned that they did not end up making a rule that your car needed to make certain amount of sounds.
It
So
depends,
that
yeah, on where you are
yeah,
in the world.
yeah.
In Europe, at least by now, I knew it from Japan, but also in Europe, they have this regulation that from 0 to 30, you have to have some noise generator. So even Teslas have since I don't know how many years, but eventually they started to make noise as well. But it's actually just some shaped noise, not probably not white noise, but some
Mm.
shh. That
Okay. So you
so
can just tell
it's
something's
yeah,
coming.
and
Yeah.
other cars are trying to do anything between combustion engine and spaceship.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so fascinating
Yeah,
that
yeah,
like
yeah.
you could have your car sound like it's out of the Jetsons. I just thought that was amazing. So much fun.
Hi, this is Will Seabrook, and you're listening to the Audio Branding Podcast, a great place to learn about how powerful sound can be. If you want to understand how to harness that power in your own life, keep listening.
I want to move on to just what you're excited about for the future. So when it comes to sound design and interactional design and in what you're putting out into the world, what are you excited about? What will the future bring, do you think?
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about AI now.
I talk about it a
Uh,
lot here,
yeah,
so
that's what I
I get
thought,
it.
and
But
also
yeah.
we have a project, a research project in the pipeline on AI supported tools for sound designers, which are it's definitely a theme and interesting. But what I'm most excited about is actually what I'm doing now in the health sector, but which could also transfer to other sectors. Is again advocating more for bringing design to sounds of our everyday life, which is so designed. We have even IKEA, the whole, let's say, people are actually very sensitive to good design. They understand intuitively what is a good design, well-designed chair, well-designed car, well-designed clothing, and so on, and kitchen appliances. Um, and of course, you're not talking about the price thing, which is another factor. But in general, I would say there is a sensitivity to design in a formal and visual and so on aspect, but not in the sonic domain. And I actually that's something that keeps me on the toes since many years. I also worked in music education for quite a while, and what interested me there was sound education. Like because I believe my theory is that the discrepancy in the also the standing of sound as an element of design versus other aspects of design has partially to do with how we all are socialized and educated in this field. Because in music education in school, we learn a lot about in technical education or the arts in school already in the young age. We learn to draw, we learn to see something and then make a sketch. We learn a lot of basic techniques, and we learn about the golden cut. We learn about all these stuff in school. In the sonic domain, we only learn about music. So I don't want to diminish the quality and the value of that, but
No, not at all. Yeah. Yeah,
but
I get
it's
it.
not that's not sound, right? It's a
Yeah.
segment of sound, and it's a
Mhm.
very often, of course, it's a very small segment of a canon of Western composers, and we all learn the
We take it for
major, minor,
granted.
and so on. So we learn the same stuff, but we don't learn about the soundscape. We don't learn about the noise of the squeaking door. How do I describe this? And so on. So, and that's for me one of the reasons why we need really to advocate for sound, but not in an elitistic way. It's not the big cinema thing, which is fascinating and has its place. But for me, what is fascinating is empowering people to talk about sound and to co-create at least sounds for their workplace, for their everyday lives. And that's in the health domain is very specific. There is a very specific field where I'm able to thankfully able to do this kind of work now by working with nurses and with doctors and discussing on how sound could be changed for their workplace. And my interest or what fascinates me is to bring to come up with ways of doing that together in a participatory way, which in design is a pretty established method to do it together with people. But in sound, it's still usually the guy, unfortunately, but the person, female, male, sitting in the dark basement doing some magic, pressing some buttons, and then something comes out that you like or you hate. And this is that it's not it, right? So I mean, if we compare that to how the standing of design in other places, the proud chest, that design can have, that's really what interests me, and that's also a motivation for co-leading this sound design master program, because part of our education is really not just getting our students to become professional sound designers, producers, engineers, but also to sensitize them on how can we work with non-experts, with people in the field. How can we discover opportunities for sound in everyday lives that nobody thought about, and how can we actually communicate and present our ideas and pitch them so that we get funding, we get either research funding or company funding, industrial funding, to realize how to make a change. So this is what really, that's where I think the future should go. At least it's not very flashy. It's not high tech, but this is really what drives me. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
we need more of that. And to that point, I am curious how you think sound design can become more inclusive. Because you mentioned earlier that it was very westernized, what we were taught in schools. And I mean, how do we diversify that? How does that improve?
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe one, I mean, we have to unlearn a lot of things. That's a term that I also take from I'm also teaching sound studies, so critical approach to sound theory that is not technically founded, but more in the studies of cultures, and that definitely includes nowadays as the global south and cultures that were excluded, colonially excluded or appropriated by Western culture and homogenized, so to say, so that film sounds the same everywhere nowadays, so more or less, or very similar, the mainstream film. But so it's definitely about that as well, to learn about these other worlds of sound and realities, and also to make clear to everybody that they can articulate their own sound experiences freely, and just again, empower them also to maybe make sounds in a way, with simple tools. I was in a project once where during Corona, which actually was enabling a lot of exchanges that before were nobody thought about, because everybody had these video chat software. So all of a sudden, right, and it was so easy. All of a sudden, everybody was like, "Oh wow, why don't we just make a workshop with somebody in Japan and in South
Yeah.
America and Australia and New Zealand?"
Zoom makes everything possible.
Yeah, the only time is the last remaining
Yeah.
issue, right?
Yeah.
So finding those time frames, but then we did, for instance, a series of workshops where people just brought their own sounds from their environment. Everybody was in shutdown, right, or lockdowns, so they could not go out, but the microphone of their mobile phones in that case or if they had of their recorders, could help them to reach out, right? And you would hear, and sound can transport you far away, like the distant sound, a wind, a bird, and so on. But also inside you discover so many new sounds that you never realized. And in that sense, COVID was really a blessing, so to say, because at least for us in the arts, for many people it was terrible and horrifying. But if anything came out of it, there was a certain sensitivity and sensitization to the little sounds that we never noticed. And we did some work around that, and people just shared those sounds, and they had so many different backgrounds sonically. We had everything from sound engineers to people who never had a microphone in their hand before, consciously. Of course, we have a microphone all the time when we make a phone call, but you know what I mean. So, and that was amazing, right? Because it kind of leveled the play field. All of a sudden, we were on the same level of talking about these sonic experiences, and it was not so important anymore how much you knew already about the topic. And that was super interesting. And that's also when we realized that this is an advantage of sound over visual, the visual domain. In that case, the missing education can be an advantage. In the visual domain, everybody, we have advertisement, we have visual communication, we have pictography, we have all kinds of visual languages that are established and normative, so to say. They tell us how to think or what to think of a certain image, right? In sound, especially if it's non-musical, this is often missing. We have to come up with something. We hear that strange squeak and we have, what is this sound? And this question, what is this sound? That is opening up doors. That was so great. I mean, and if we can get this experience that people meet on ear level, not eye level, but ear level, and start to talk about their sonic experiences and then turn that into design action, make them create something with that in some
Really
way.
interesting. Yeah. I'm
Yes.
glad you had that experience because probably you experienced a lot of sounds that you had never heard before. So,
Absolutely, yes. So really
yeah,
where everybody was on eye or ear level in that sense. Yes,
that's
absolutely.
really great. Yeah. I have one more question for you. And I want to ask you if you could leave one message about the power of sound for future generations, what would you tell them? I know it's a big question.
Yeah. It's, you mean in general or
I mean, in general, it's kind of a
from
philosophical question
yeah.
almost.
Yeah, it's the power of sound is that it you have to listen to not only perceive it but to really hear and understand it. And sound, the power of sound can be, especially of sounds that seem unfamiliar or new or curious, they open up your ears in a way that makes you also open for the other people, for the other human beings, and maybe also non-human beings, right? Through listening, and that's the power of sound, we can learn about the world and the world around us in a new way. And I think, and that's actually not maybe a new message even, but it has maybe become more relevant, or it has got a new relevance in the present time, I think, to listen.
It definitely has.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your perspective on this. It's been a fabulous conversation, and I'm looking forward to sharing this with other people who will probably agree with very much a lot of what you've said. But I would love to let people know how they can get in touch with you if they'd like to do that. Do you have a website, or do you prefer LinkedIn, or?
Maybe the easiest, I have a LinkedIn page. That's definitely a way that I can be reached. I'm not very active on LinkedIn, but I'm passive, very active. So the communication channel works very well. So you can be contacted there. I can also be found on the website of the University of the Arts Zurich, zhtk.ch. There I have the study sound design, where I can be found. And for the researchers that might listen to this podcast, I'm also on ResearchGate. So that's also easy to find me there.
Good to know.
Okay. Thank
You're
you so
welcome.
much for joining me today, Daniel. I appreciate the time and your definite expertise because this was a deep dive. And I very much appreciate your doing that for us. Yeah. Thank you for taking us along.
Thank you very much, Jodi, for having me. This was a pleasure. Thanks.
Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, why not tell a friend about this podcast? It's available in all the usual locations. Until next time.